I am Megan Carter, 31, and literally last weekend, my rep as the family glue? Yeah, it totally backfired. The piece I'd worked my butt off to keep solid in my own home, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown right in my living room. My sister Diana, who's been crashing with me for 2 years with her kids, straight up demanded I keep footing her bills, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're so selfish, Megan," she yelled, with her kids and a couple of neighbors staring like I'd just kicked a puppy. But here's the tea. Her shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying comeback you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I'll do once I take that first step. It started with a choice I thought was kind. 2 years ago, Diana, freshly divorced, showed up at my doorstep, mascara streaked, her 2 kids, Brody and Lila, clutching her hands. "Just a few months, Megs," she'd sobbed. "I'll get back on my feet. I'm a software developer, single, no kids, and my 2-bedroom house in Portland was my sanctuary, hard-earned after years of grinding. But Diana's my sister. I couldn't say no. I gave her my guest room, bought extra groceries, and even paid for Brody's soccer gear. I figured I was helping family, being the dependable one, like always. But temporary stretched into years. Diana didn't job hunt. She didn't chip in for rent or utilities. Instead, she'd throw these pity parties, sighing about her hard life while scrolling her phone. I'd come home from 12-hour coding sprints to find dishes piled up in her takeout containers everywhere. If I hinted she'd contribute, she'd tear up, saying, "I'm doing my best as a single mom." Her kids, sweet but loud, turned my quiet space into chaos. My savings, meant for a down payment on a bigger place, started shrinking. $200 here for Lila's school supplies, $500 there for Diana's emergency car repair. Last weekend it hit a breaking point. We were hosting a small barbecue with neighbors, and Diana, all smiles, was playing perfect mom, tossing a frisbee with Brody. I was grilling, trying to keep it together despite her latest stunt. Borrowing $300 from my wallet for groceries that never appeared. Then, out of nowhere, she turned to our neighbor Glenn and said, "Megan's so lucky to have us. She'd be so lonely without my kids livening up this boring house." My spatula froze mid-flip. Lonely? Boring? I'd been bankrolling her life while she painted me as some sad spinster. Glenn chuckled awkwardly, but I felt my face burn. I set the spatula down, hands trembling, and said, "Diana, can we talk inside?" She rolled her eyes but followed. "In the kitchen I laid it out. You've been here 2 years, rent-free. I need you to start contributing." Her face crumpled, but not with guilt, with anger. "You're throwing us out? After everything I've been through?" she shouted, loud enough for everyone outside to hear. Brody peeked in, wide-eyed. "You just ruined us," she hissed, storming out. I stood there, heart pounding, neighbors whispering beyond the screen door. But something clicked. I wasn't the villain here. I'd been played. That night, I Googled evicting a family member and made a call that would change everything. The sting of Diana's outburst lingered as I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, the eviction search still glowing on the screen. My mind drifted back to our childhood in Tacoma, where I was always the invisible one. Growing up, our family had this unspoken hierarchy, and I was at the bottom. My parents, Faye and Vernon, would beam when Diana landed a cheerleading trophy or even just a date with some jock. "Our star," they'd call her, framing her prom photos like she'd won an Oscar. Me? I was the quiet kid who aced math and spent weekends coding my first apps. When I built a program at 16 that tracked our family budget, saving us hundreds, they barely noticed. "That's nice, Megan," Faye said once, distracted, while Diana's latest breakup got a full family powwow. It wasn't just them. My older brother Elton was the golden boy for his community college football stint, even though he dropped out. At family dinners, his half-baked business ideas got endless praise, while my scholarship to Oregon State for computer science got a nod, and a "good for you." I remember one Christmas, age 19, when I gifted everyone custom apps I'd coded. Personalized calendars, recipe trackers. Diana laughed, saying, "Who has time for that geek stuff?" Faye agreed, "Honey, maybe focus on something practical." Meanwhile, Diana's part-time barista job was apparently so entrepreneurial. The pattern never stopped. At 25, I landed a lead developer role at a Portland startup, pulling 6 figures. I told my parents over Skype, expecting maybe a wow. Instead, Vernon rambled about Diana's tough divorce and how she was holding it together. She'd been married to Corey, a car salesman, for 5 years, and when they split, everyone acted like she'd survived a war. I sent her $1,000 to help with rent, no questions asked. She never mentioned it again. Even when I bought my house at 28, a cozy craftsman I'd saved for since college, the family barely reacted. Elton texted, "Nice sis," but Faye's only comment was, "Isn't it big for just you?" Diana, meanwhile, got endless sympathy for moving into a cramped apartment she barely paid for. When she showed up at my place 2 years ago, I thought I was breaking the cycle, proving I could be the dependable one. Instead, I'd just given her a new stage to shine on while I faded again. Sitting there now, I traced the grain of the table with my finger, remembering how I'd swallow my hurt back then, thinking if I worked harder, they'd see me. They never did. But those years of being ignored, they taught me to build my own world. My coding skills, my discipline, they were mine, not their applause. Yet here was Diana, waltzing through my life like she owned it, making me feel small again. I closed the laptop, my jaw tight. The neighbor's whispers from the barbecue still echoed in my head, but so did a quieter voice, mine, from years ago, promising I'd never let anyone dim me again. I wasn't that kid anymore, and Diana wasn't some untouchable star. She was a guest who'd overstayed her welcome, and I was done being invisible in my own damn house. The laptop snapped shut, but my mind was racing, pulling me back to the nights that forged me. 2 years ago, when Diana first moved in, I didn't just open my home, I threw myself into work to cope. My job at a Portland tech firm was demanding, but I'd started a side project in secret, something just for me. After Diana's kids were asleep and she was binge-watching reality shows, I'd retreat to my bedroom, prop my laptop on a pillow, and code. Those late hours, fueled by black coffee and stubbornness, were when I built TaskNest, an app to streamline project management for small teams. It was my rebellion against the chaos Diana brought. My way of proving I could still control something. The struggle was brutal. I'd code until 2 a.m., my eyes burning, then wake at 6 for my day job. Diana's voice would drift through the walls, whining about her ex or her stress, while I debugged lines in silence. Once, Brody spilled juice on my external hard drive, and I lost a week's progress. I wanted to scream, but I just bought a new drive and kept going. Every bug fixed, every feature added, felt like a brick in a wall between me and her mess. I didn't tell anyone, not my team, not my friends, definitely not my family. They'd never valued my work before. Why would this be different? Then came the aha moment. 6 months in, I uploaded TaskNest to a developer forum for feedback. Within days, users were raving. Small business owners, freelancers, even a startup CEO. "This is a game changer," one posted. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, rereading the words. By the time Diana had been with me a year, TaskNest had 5,000 active users, and I was fielding emails from investors. I incorporated it, hired a part-time designer, and watched it grow, all while Diana never noticed I was burning out to pay her way. That secret success became my armor. When Diana sighed about her sacrifices as a mom, I'd think of the all-nighters I pulled to keep my app alive. When she borrowed cash I couldn't spare, I'd remember the $10,000 seed funding I'd just secured. TaskNest wasn't just an app, it was proof I was more than the family's doormat. But keeping it hidden took a toll. I'd catch myself clenching my fists when Diana called me lucky for my easy life. Her kids, toys strewn across my floor. I wanted to shout, "I'm building something real while you leech off me." But I didn't. Not yet. Last weekend after her barbecue stunt, that silence felt like betrayal of myself. I opened my laptop again, pulling up TaskNest's dashboard. 20,000 users now, and a pending deal with a major tech firm. My finger hovered over the screen, tracing the numbers. This was mine, built through exhaustion and grit. Diana could play the martyr, but she couldn't touch this. And as I thought about that eviction search, I realized TaskNest wasn't just my escape, it was my power. I wasn't just going to kick her out, I was going to reclaim every inch of my life, starting with my home. The glow of my laptop faded as I rubbed my eyes, the weight of that eviction search settling in. It was Friday night, and tomorrow loomed like a storm. I had a critical deadline for TaskNest, a pitch to a tech firm that could license the app for 6 figures, maybe more. But Diana was planning another family dinner at my house, inviting neighbors like it was her place. I could already hear her voice, sugary and sharp, turning every conversation into a stage for her sob story. My stomach knotted at the thought of her spinning me as the cold sister who didn't understand her struggles. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the quiet house, and paced the kitchen. Diana was out with the kids, probably at some free community event she'd bragged about discovering. The house felt briefly mine again, my mugs in the sink, my code books on the counter, not buried under her clutter. But I knew she'd come back, flouncing in with that entitled smile, expecting me to play along. I stopped pacing, gripping the counter, my knuckles whitening. I'd spent the week dodging her passive-aggressive texts. "Can you grab milk? I'm so swamped with the kids." Swamped? I'd seen her scrolling social media for hours. Meanwhile, I was juggling TaskNest, my day job, and her bills. I glanced at my phone. 10 p.m. The pitch deck for tomorrow's meeting was 90% done, but I needed to nail the financial projections. I sat back down, forcing myself to focus, but Diana's voice crept into my head. Last week she'd jokingly told our neighbor Selma I was too busy with my nerd stuff to care about family. Selma had laughed, but it cut deep. I typed a few numbers, then stopped, my fingers hovering. What if Diana pulled something bigger tomorrow? She'd already humiliated me at the barbecue. A dinner, with more eyes, was her perfect stage. I stood again, restless, and caught my reflection in the kitchen window, bags under my eyes, hair in a messy bun. I looked like someone who'd been running on fumes, and I was. But beneath that exhaustion was something else. Resolve. I thought of TaskNest, my secret weapon, and the lawyer I'd called after the barbecue. He'd said eviction was possible but messy. 60 days notice, maybe court. I hadn't decided yet, but just knowing I had options made me feel taller. The front door clicked open, and Diana's voice floated in, loud and cheerful. "Megs, we're back! Brody got a free balloon!" I forced a smile as Brody ran in, waving it, Lila trailing with a sticky candy wrapper. Diana didn't even glance at me, just dumped her bag on my couch and started scrolling her phone. "Big day tomorrow," she called, not looking up. "You're cooking, right?" My jaw tightened, but I nodded, swallowing the urge to snap. Tomorrow wasn't just her dinner, it was my breaking point. I turned back to my laptop, the pitch deck waiting. Let her play her games. I was ready to play mine. Diana's family dinner was in full swing, and I was already fraying. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken I'd cooked, my hands still raw from chopping vegetables after a sleepless night polishing my TaskNest pitch. Neighbors crowded my table. Selma, Glenn, and his wife, Tilda, while Brody and Lila darted around, giggling. Diana, in a flowy dress, held court, pouring wine and laughing too loudly. I sat at the table's end, forcing a smile, my laptop upstairs with the pitch deck I'd emailed to the tech firm an hour ago. Every clink of glasses felt like a countdown to Diana's next jab. She didn't waste time. As I passed the mashed potatoes, she leaned towards Selma, her voice dripping with pity. "Megan's so generous, letting us stay here rent-free. I mean, this big house, it's not like she needs all this space." Selma nodded politely, but I felt Tilda's eyes on me, curious. My fork paused mid-air, my chest tightening. I wanted to say I'd paid for every inch of this house while Diana contributed nothing, but I bit my tongue. Not yet. I took a sip of water, the glass cold against my palm, and tried to focus on Glenn's small talk about his garden. Then Diana pivoted. "You know, Megs works so hard at her computer job," she said, her tone syrupy. "Must be nice, no kids, no real stress." She sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, playing the weary mom. Glenn chuckled, and Selma murmured something sympathetic. My face burned. No stress? I'd spent $15,000 on her emergencies last year alone. I set my glass down harder than I meant to, the thud drawing eyes. "It's demanding," I said, voice tight. "Coding isn't exactly a vacation." Diana raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Oh, we know you're a genius, Megs." The condescension hit like a slap. I glanced at Brody, who was stacking peas on his plate, oblivious. Lila was doodling on a napkin. They didn't deserve this tension, but Diana was relentless. She turned to Tilda. "I'm just saying, if I had Megan's life, I'd be so relaxed. But single moms? We carry the world." Tilda nodded, but her eyes flicked to me, sensing the undercurrent. I dug my nails into my palm under the table, fighting the urge to explode. Relaxed? I hadn't had a full night's sleep in months. I stood to clear plates, needing an escape. In the kitchen, I gripped the sink, breathing hard. Diana's voice floated in, now telling a story about Lila's school play, soaking up the table's attention. I stared at the dirty dishes, my reflection warped in a spoon. This was my home, my table, and she was turning it into her stage, painting me as some lonely nerd who lucked into stability. The lawyer's number was still in my phone. I dried my hands, my resolve hardening. Diana could play her game, but I was done being her prop. Tonight she'd push too far, and I'd be ready. The dinner plates were stacked in the sink, but I couldn't hide in the kitchen forever. Diana's voice, now louder, pulled me back to the dining room. She was mid-story, gesturing wildly, her wine glass nearly tipping. And I'm out here raising 2 kids alone, while Megan's just... What? Typing code? The table laughed, but it was strained, Selma shifting in her seat. I froze in the doorway, my apron still on, hands clenched at my sides. Diana caught my eye and didn't stop. I mean, bless her, but she's got no clue how hard it is. I'm basically keeping this house alive with my kids' energy. That was it. The room spun for a second, her words slicing through 2 years of swallowed resentment. Glenn coughed awkwardly, and Tilda's fork hovered mid-bite. Brody looked up, confused, while Lila kept coloring, humming softly. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. Diana, stop. She blinked, feigning innocence, her lips parting in that practiced pout. What? I'm just saying, Megs. You're lucky I'm here. This place would be a tomb without us. Lucky? My pulse hammered. I opened my mouth to fire back, but she barreled on, turning to the neighbors. She's so private, right? Never talks about her life, but I'm an open book. I mean, someone's gotta hold this family together. Her laugh was sharp, and she leaned back, crossing her arms like she'd won. The neighbors stared, caught in her performance, but I saw Selma's brow furrow, sensing the lie. My hands shook, but I stayed rooted, every unpaid bill and sleepless night flashing through my mind. Then Diana went for the kill. Honestly, she said, voice dropping for drama, Megan's got this big house, big job, but she's so distant. I'm the one making memories for her nieces and nephews. She sighed, eyes glistening. Crocodile tears. I just wish she'd appreciate what I do. The room went silent, forks still, eyes darting between us. Glenn cleared his throat, but no one spoke. I felt naked, my sacrifices twisted into her narrative, my home, my money, my life, reduced to her prop. I was about to snap when my phone buzzed in my pocket, loud enough to break the tension. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and saw the lawyer's name, Randall Holt. I'd emailed him after the barbecue, asking about eviction timelines. Heart pounding, I answered, stepping toward the hall. Megan, it's Randall, his calm voice cut through. I've reviewed your case. You can serve a 60-day notice tomorrow if you're ready. I glanced back at the table, Diana's smug smile faltering as she watched me. Tomorrow, I whispered. Yes, he said. You've got the upper hand. I hung up, my breath steadying. Diana tilted her head, mock concerned. Everything okay, Megs? The neighbors leaned in, sensing the shift. I slipped the phone into my pocket, my voice cold. It will be. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push. The room felt electric, like everyone knew something had changed. I turned back to the kitchen, my apron strings digging into my waist. Diana's humiliation had cut deep, but Randall's call was my lifeline. She'd crossed a line, and I was done bleeding for her. The air in the dining room crackled as I stepped back from the hallway, Randall's words. You've got the upper hand, echoing in my head. Diana was still at the table, swirling her wine, her smirk fading as she sensed the shift in me. The neighbors, Selma, Glenn, and Tilda, were quiet, their eyes flicking between us like they'd stumbled into a play's final act. Brody was poking at his peas, and Lila's crayon scratched softly, the only sounds in the tense silence. I stood by my chair, hands steady now, the phone in my pocket, a quiet anchor. Diana raised an eyebrow, her voice syrupy. So Megs, who was that? Another work thing you're too busy for us with. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I sat, folding my hands on the table, and looked her dead in the eye. That was my lawyer, I said, my voice even cutting through her theatrics. Her glass paused mid-swirl, and Selma's fork clinked against her plate. Glenn leaned forward, brow furrowed. Diana laughed, but it was forced, her eyes darting. Lawyer? For what? You're so dramatic. I didn't blink. For the eviction notice I'm serving you tomorrow. The room froze. Tilda's mouth opened slightly, and Brody looked up, confused, his piece forgotten. Diana's face flushed, her pout replaced by something raw. Panic. Eviction? You're joking? You'd kick out your own sister? Your niece and nephew? Her voice rose, cracking, but I saw the neighbors shift, their sympathy waning. I leaned forward, calm but firm. 2 years, Diana. No rent, no bills, no help. I've paid for your groceries, your kids' clothes, your car. And you call me selfish? My words hung heavy, each one landing like a stone. Selma's eyes widened and Glenn rubbed his neck uncomfortable. Diana sputtered, trying to pivot. I'm a single mom. You have no idea. I cut her off, my voice sharper now. I know I've spent $20,000 keeping you afloat while you've done nothing but take. The number hit hard. Tilda gasped softly. Diana's hands gripped the table, her knuckles white, but she had no comeback. The neighbors' faces said it all. Shock, then clarity. They'd bought her poor me act, but the truth was undeniable now. I stood, my chair scraping softly, and addressed the table. I wanted to help my sister, but she's used me, and I'm done. My eyes locked on Diana's, her bravado crumbling. You have 60 days to find a new place. She stared, mouth agape, as Brody tugged her sleeve, whispering, Mom? She didn't answer, her eyes glassy. The neighbors avoided her gaze, Selma twisting her napkin, Glenn staring at his plate. The power had shifted, and Diana knew it. I walked to the kitchen, my heart pounding but light, like I'd shed a weight. Behind me, the table stayed silent, Diana's reign broken by a single call. Randall's voice replayed in my mind. You're ready. And I was. The eviction was just the start. I was taking back my life, and no one, not even my sister, could stop me. The kitchen was a refuge, the hum of the fridge grounding me as I leaned against the counter, my hands still tingling from the confrontation. Diana's silence in the dining room felt louder than her usual theatrics, the neighbors' hushed murmurs filtering through the wall. I could picture her, frozen at the table, her wine glass abandoned, Brody's small hand still on her sleeve. The weight of my words, 60 days to find a new place, hung in the air, unshakable. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things. I was done being her safety net. The screen door creaked and Selma slipped into the kitchen, her eyes soft but serious. Megan, she whispered, glancing back toward the dining room. I had no idea. We all thought, well, Diana made it sound like you needed her. I let out a bitter laugh, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Yeah, she's good at that. Selma hesitated, then touched my arm. You did the right thing. Her words, simple as they were, steadied me. I nodded, tossing the towel onto the counter, and straightened up. This wasn't over yet. Back in the dining room, Diana was trying to rally, her voice shaky but defiant. Megan's blowing this out of proportion, she said to Glenn and Tilda, who looked unconvinced, their plates pushed aside. She's always been jealous of me, you know? Can't handle my kids' energy. I stepped in, cutting her off mid-spin. Jealous? My voice was calm, but it carried, every eye turning to me. I've funded your life, Diana. Your kids' shoes, your phone bill, your emergencies. I'm not jealous, I'm exhausted. Her mouth opened, then closed, her face reddening as Tilda raised an eyebrow. I kept going, each word deliberate, like laying bricks. You've painted me as the bad guy to everyone, neighbors, our parents, even your kids. But the truth? You've contributed nothing while I've lost my savings, my peace, my home. I gestured to the room, my voice rising slightly. This is my house, and you've treated it like your personal hotel. Diana's eyes darted to the neighbors, seeking an ally, but Glenn was staring at the table, and Tilda's lips were pursed. Brody and Lila were quiet, Lila clutching her crayon like a lifeline. Diana tried one last jab, her voice venomous. You're heartless, Megan, kicking out family? I didn't flinch. Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't steal. The word steal hit hard, and Selma, now back at the table, nodded slightly, her earlier words echoing in my mind. I turned to the neighbors, my voice steady. Thank you for coming, but I need to handle this. Good night. They stood, murmuring awkward farewells, Glenn patting my shoulder as he passed. Diana stayed seated, glaring, but I didn't look back. I walked to the front door, holding it open as they filed out, the cool night air brushing my face. As the last car pulled away, I closed the door, my hand lingering on the knob. Diana's reign was over, and I was finally free to rebuild, starting now. The front door clicked shut, sealing out the neighbors' retreating footsteps and leaving an unfamiliar quiet in the house. Diana was still in the dining room, her chair scraping as she stood, muttering something to Brody and Lila about bedtime. I didn't follow. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and slipped out the back door, the cool Portland air hitting my face like a reset. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend Patrice. "You okay?" "Heard the dinner was intense." I smiled, typing back, "Need a breather? Meet me at Clancy's?" Her reply was instant. "Already there." Clancy's was a cozy pub a few blocks away, all warm wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where you could exhale. Patrice was at our usual corner booth, her curly hair tucked into a bun, nursing a cider. Across from her was Vernon. Yes, another Vernon, not my dad, a lanky graphic designer who'd become my unofficial cheerleader since Tasknest launched. They waved me over, and I slid into the booth, the tension in my shoulders loosening just a fraction. "Spill," Patrice said, pushing a glass of water my way. "Silma texted me, said you dropped a bomb on Diana." I laughed, the sound surprising me, and recounted the dinner, the lawyer's call, Diana's meltdown, the neighbors' stunned faces. Vernon leaned forward, his glasses slipping down his nose. "You told her 60 days? That's badass, Megan." Patrice nodded, her eyes gleaming. "About time, she's been bleeding you dry." Their words wrapped around me like a blanket, so different from Diana's barbed jabs or my family's indifference. These were my people. The ones who saw me, have not the role I played. Patrice reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're not alone in this, you know. We've got your back." Vernon chimed in, "Yeah, and Tasknest? That's your empire. Diana's got nothing on you." I sipped my water, the ice clinking, and felt a warmth I hadn't in months. At the dinner, Diana had weaponized my solitude, painting me as the lonely sister. But here, with Patrice's quick laugh and Vernon's nerdy enthusiasm, I wasn't alone. I was chosen, by friends who valued my grit, not my wallet. We stayed for an hour, swapping stories. Patrice told us about her latest pottery class disaster. Clay splattered on her ceiling, and Vernon admitted he'd cried watching a dog rescue video. I laughed until my sides ached, the weight of Diana's drama fading. As we split the bill, Patrice hugged me tight. "You're doing the hard thing, but it's right. Stay strong." Vernon fist-bumped me. "And keep us posted on that tech deal." Walking home, the streetlights blurring in the misty air, I felt anchored. Diana's world was chaos, but this, friendship, loyalty, laughter, was my real home. Tomorrow, I'd face her again, but tonight, I was already rebuilding. The morning after Clancy's, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains, and for once, I didn't dread the sound of Diana's voice or her kids' footsteps. I sat at my desk, laptop open, drafting the eviction notice Randall had emailed me, a simple legal form that felt like a declaration of independence. My fingers paused over the keys, not from doubt, but from the weight of what came next. Diana wouldn't go quietly, and I needed to be ready. I printed the notice, the printer's hum steadying my nerves, and tucked it into a folder. Today I'd set the rules. Downstairs, Diana was in the kitchen, pouring cereal for Brody and Lila, her face tight. She'd been silent since last night's dinner, no doubt plotting her counterattack. I poured coffee, my mug warm in my hands, and faced her. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice even. She rolled her eyes, tossing a spoon into the sink with a clatter. "What now, Megan? Another lecture?" Brody glanced up, milk dripping from his chin, and Lila hugged her stuffed bunny, sensing the tension. I nodded toward the living room. "Alone." She followed, arms crossed, her posture all defiance. I shut the door behind us and handed her the eviction notice. "This is official. You have 60 days to find a new place." Her eyes scanned the paper, widening, then narrowing. "You're serious? You'd put us on the street?" Her voice cracked, but I saw the calculation behind it. Tears as a weapon. I didn't flinch. "I've given you 2 years, Diana. You've paid nothing, contributed nothing. I'm not your bank." She threw the paper onto the couch, pacing, her hands flailing. "I'm your sister. I've been through hell, and you're punishing me?" I stepped forward, my voice firm. "No, I'm protecting myself. You've manipulated me, humiliated me, and I'm done." Her mouth opened, but I kept going. "New rules. You start paying $500 a month for utilities and groceries starting next week. You clean up after yourself and the kids, and you respect my space." Diana laughed, bitter and sharp. "Or what? You'll call your lawyer?" I nodded, unflinching. "Exactly." Her face fell, the bravado slipping. She sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples, muttering about how unfair this was. I didn't budge. You can fight this in court, but you'll lose. Save your energy and start looking for a job. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't argue. For the first time she looked small, cornered by her own choices. I walked back to the kitchen, my heart steady, and poured more coffee. Brody and Lila were still eating, Leela humming softly. I smiled at them, not wanting them to feel the weight of this. Diana trailed in, silent, and started wiping the counter, slowly, resentfully. But it was a start. I'd drawn the line, and while her resistance would linger, I'd built a fortress. My home, my rules, my life. No one could take that again. The eviction notice was served, and the house felt lighter, like I'd cracked open a window after years of stale air. Diana was quieter now, her usual theatrics muted, though I caught her sullen glances when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't dwell on it. My focus shifted to something bigger, using TaskNest to build something lasting, not just for me, but for others. That morning I sat at my desk, the familiar hum of my laptop grounding me, and opened an email from the tech firm. They'd greenlit the licensing deal, $150,000 upfront with royalties. My hands froze on the keyboard, a grin spreading. This was real. But the money wasn't the point, not entirely. TaskNest had been my lifeline through Diana's chaos, proof I could create under pressure. Now, I wanted it to mean more. I'd been mentoring a few coders online, mostly young women like I'd been overlooked, grinding in the shadows. One of them, Kira, a 22-year-old from Seattle, had sent me a prototype for a TaskNest add-on last week. It was rough, but brilliant, and I saw myself in her hunger. I typed a reply, offering to pair her with my designer for feedback and set up a virtual meetup for my mentees. This was my legacy, not the Carter family drama. Later that day, I walked to a local community center, my sneakers scuffing the sidewalk, to scout their coding workshop space. I'd been tossing around the idea of running free sessions for teens, teaching them to build apps from scratch. The coordinator, Marla, greeted me with a warm handshake, her glasses slipping as she showed me the room. Basic, with outdated PCs, but enough. "You're doing a good thing," she said, jotting my name down. I shrugged, but inside I felt a spark. My parents had never valued my work, and Diana had mocked it, but here I could redefine what Carter meant. Back home, Diana was in the kitchen, scrubbing a pan, begrudgingly, but doing it. Brody and Lila were at school, and the quiet let me think. I leaned against the counter, watching her stiff movements. "I'm starting a coding program," I said, testing the waters. She snorted, not looking up. "Good for you." Her tone was bitter, but I didn't care. This wasn't for her approval, it was for me, for Kira, for kids like Brody, who might need a path she couldn't give them. That evening, I called Patrice and Vernon, sharing the community center plan. Patrice whooped over the phone, and Vernon offered to design a logo for the workshops. Their excitement fueled mine, and as I hung up, I glanced at a photo on my fridge. Me at my college graduation, alone, no family in the crowd. I'd built everything despite them, and now I was building more, on my terms. The Carter name wasn't Diana's sob stories or my parents' neglect. It was this: creation, impact, purpose, and I was just getting started. The coding workshop idea had taken root, and 2 weeks later, I was back at the community center, setting up for a trial session. Marla had spread the word, and 5 teens showed up, their backpacks slung over chairs, eyes curious but wary. I stood at the front, a borrowed projector flickering behind me, and walked them through building a simple app. One kid, Jamal, got it instantly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, while a shy girl, Nora, hesitated but smiled when her code worked. Watching them, I felt a quiet peace settle in, like I'd found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. Back home, Diana was packing. Slowly, resentfully, but packing. She'd found a cheap apartment across town, and though she still shot me icy looks, she'd started paying the $500 I'd demanded. Brody and Lila seemed okay, their chatter filling the house as they helped tape boxes. I made a point to hug them daily, promising they'd always have me, just with boundaries. Diana's manipulation had lost its grip, and my home was becoming mine again. Dishes stayed clean, my desk stayed clear, and I could breathe. That night I sat on my porch, a mug of tea warming my hands, the Portland sky streaked with pink. I thought about the last 2 years, Diana's arrival, the financial drain, the barbecue, the dinner. I'd been so afraid of being the bad sister, of losing family, that I'd let her erode me. But standing up to her, serving that notice, wasn't just about reclaiming my house. It was about reclaiming me. Tasknest, the workshops, my friends, they were proof I didn't need my family's validation. My worth wasn't in their applause or Diana's tears, it was in the life I'd built, the people I lifted up, the quiet pride in my own grit. I sipped my tea, the steam curling in the cool air, and let that truth settle. The pain of Diana's betrayal still stung, but it didn't define me. I was Megan Carter, coder, mentor, friend, and that was enough. The stars blinked above, and for the first time in years I felt whole, not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen myself. Have you ever had to draw a line with someone you love, knowing it hurt, but set you free? That's where I landed with Diana, and I want to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it's okay to put yourself first. Standing up to my sister wasn't just about a house, it was about rebuilding my life on my terms. You can do that too. Set boundaries, chase your purpose, and know your worth isn't in anyone else's hands, it's in yours. So, what's your next step? Reflect, share, and let's keep building our stories together.